Now I know what you're thinking, how could something from such an acclaimed series be considered one of the worst games ever? Wait, so Drake isn't a popular comic book and television franchise? Well, the developers at Idle FX certainly were betting on the 6 months taken to develop this game would launch a successful series. My audience is also betting that in the 10 or so minutes I spent talking about this game, I rip it a new arsehole, so let's get to it. Drake of the 99 Dragons is a third-person shooter with simplistic cel-shaded graphics to mimic the aesthetic and feel of a comic book. Talking about comic books, there was a prequel comic released to help make the convoluted story a fraction more sense because trying to piece this story together is harder than putting together wet sand with tape. The comic sees Drake kill Chung by planting a bomb in his plastic surgeon's head, whose work made Chung look great for 166 years. Drake saves these two ladies from the danger of the explosion, but puts them in greater risk when he exposes them to the one-liner spouted from his mouth every 2 seconds, which is exactly how he is in-game.
This is a one-way street. To hell. Those who know my name whisper it in fear. Most people I meet, I only meet once. I am Drake, the assassin. To me, life is all about death. A fireworks factory is a good place to go if you want to go out to the boom. Things are heating up.
It then cuts to Tang Industries, whose self-titled owner, Tang, is making a deal with the Spirit Lord Supremes, which sounds like the Call of Duty clan for an Xbox Live group, and Tang simply wants souls to power his army of cyborgs. Why can't he power his cyborgs with an easier power source? Well, then the plot wouldn't kick off. To keep a consistent soul portal for a constant influx of souls, Tang needs the creatively named Soul Portal artifact, which is currently guarded by the clan of the 99 Dragons. Tang then sends the Ghost Assassin, which is, you guessed it, a creature from the spirit world, to steal the artifact from the 99 Dragons. Drake's master coincidentally just so happens to tell Drake about the soul artifact and pass on the soul protection duties onto Drake moments before it's stolen. And that's about where the comic catches up to the story in game, so I'll talk about those parts later. There are quotes in the comic that are used during the game as a cool throwback for the readers, I guess, but most of them are out of context of the comic and just weird to hear. The completely optional tutorial was skipped over by me the first time I played this, but I went back and played it for the sake of elongating this video. The opening level teaches players the god-awful controls and a training procedure in a dojo, which is then preceded by a fight with the Tang cyborg. Thankfully, Drake is shirtless during the tutorial to show off his incredibly chiseled, steroid-induced chest, which offsets his stick legs. While Drake does do many stupid things throughout the game, it doesn't help that his appearance makes him seem like a dumbass, starting with his blocky hair that looks like a Lego piece clicked onto the top of his head. Drake's chin juts out of his face more than my penis when I'm around attractive women, and it could probably be an effective weapon when swung around like his arms. His mouth is constantly agape, and that could prove that he's a drooling idiot, but in honestly, it would be wetter than a crackhead's chin with that helipad-sized monstrosity attached to his head. Despite not being dead at the start of the game, Drake's eyes are completely white like they're rolling back inside his skull from receiving some top-notch head from a woman with Mariana Trench deep-throating skills. The tutorial is recommended to start off the game with less confusion as, without it, Drake begins monologuing about a cyborg that you've never seen.
Strange thing about the cyborg, a machine, yet I sensed presence inside it. A soul?
I could rant about how corny Drake's voice acting is, but every voice actor sounds like English wasn't their first language, and their poor eyesight affected their performance when reading the script that was scrawled onto a napkin with grease.
This theft can't be Tang's doing alone. He must have aid from beyond this world.
After finishing the tutorial, Ghost Assassin and his goons attack the penthouse of the 99 Dragons, which is severely lacking in women and booze. Drake goes out to stop them, but not before putting on his trench coat, which thankfully doesn't prevent us from seeing his nippleless, cheaply dragon tattoo covered muscle-bound chest. While Drake has nothing to do with the famous rapper, he might as well be Wheelchair Jimmy with how difficult to maneuver he is, and he'll wrestle with the controls more than a redneck would mud wrestle their cousin. The guns Drake totes must be too much to handle for his brittle bone disease addled arms because they flail around like a kid about to get vaccinated. What I mean by that is while you may have your reticule aimed straight at an enemy, Drake's arms usually aren't pointed at where you're aiming, so shots will be fired wherever. They could be aiming at any direction, from the ceiling to the side of Drake's head to finally kill the idiot they're attached to. This leads to enemies taking way more hits than they should to go down, simply because most shots aren't lined up with them. Each gun is fired independently of one another, so you either need to spam both mouse clicks or both triggers, depending if you're playing on the PC or Xbox, to exhibit maximum firepower. Instead of reloading his weapons, Drake will throw his weapon away more frequently than I throw my child support bills away. You're not getting a cent from me, Veronica. To survive the game, it's better to unload the rest of your clip when it's low than to run into another room as is. Enemies will drop new weapons for you to pick up, but with these simplistic graphics, you can only tell what you picked up until you scroll to it. Talking about the visuals, the comic book look was just an excuse to have simplistic, untextured graphics that are blockier than Drake's chin and chiseled chest, although I think it's cool that the comic book sound effects text is prevalent throughout the game. While fairly basic in terms of polygons per inch of screen, the graphics really shine with how they allow the colours to pop right out at you and really help differentiate the different locations for you. The guns seemingly multiply in Drake's trench coat, because whenever he puts a new gun in there, he can pull an infinite amount back out of his coat. That is until the end of a level where every gun, bar the default pistols, magically disappears, possibly from being fed up with Drake's terrible aim. Drake only has a base health of 99, just to further drill in the point that he's from the 99 Dragons clan, and his health will drain more quickly than he will toss his guns away. Reaching where the soul portal artifact is, you pursue the ghost assassin until he phases out of a window, and it's surprising Drake stops chasing it there considering what he does later on. You return to your master where you find he's dead as well as yourself, so I guess the fury Drake got from the mere thought of someone breaking into the penthouse of the 99 Dragons kept him going this whole time. Maybe it was God's plan to keep him going. It also means the lame ice gunfight Drake threw himself into headfirst got him killed. Seeing this bizarre scene also gives Drake flashbacks to when his master drugged him and gave him that crappy back alleyway tattoo that allows Drake to have all these powers. Although you could chalk it up as reliving a traumatic experience, I think it's just a shitty way for exposition to be given to you. At this point, enemies that are killed will leave their souls behind to collect before they rise up to heaven. Although in my playthrough, it seems dogs and people who use mounted turrets are soulless. Go figure. Collecting souls will replenish Drake's health and refills his slow motion meter. Red souls will deplete health because I guess the developers forgot Drake was the imbecile in this situation and needed us to remember green go, red stop. The slow motion ability is at least somewhat useful due to the fact that you move slightly faster than your surroundings. It seems the slow-mo also affects the button inputs because it takes some time after you hit the button to stop slow motion until it actually returns time to normal, or in some rare cases if you're unlucky, it'll activate the freeze time ability that's completely useless as both Drake and his surrounding cannot move. Drake also learns the ability to run up walls and is about as effective as someone with a clubfoot trying to scale a freshly cleaned glass building. You see, every time you jump toward a wall, the power automatically activates, and Drake only lasts about a second running. It's realistic, sure, but in a game where the protagonist can slow down time, I wish it wasn't so wimpy. After collecting 30 souls, the soul power surge through Drake, and simply put, he jumps from a window. A lot of people criticize Drake for doing this, as they think his line of "nothing can stop me now" is untrue, which it isn't, as he easily crashes through the window and still manages to make it to the end of the game despite this. In fact, the 99 Dragons clan should be criticized for having such weak windows if Drake can manage to break through. Wouldn't you want your headquarters to be as fortified as possible? You know, have bulletproof glass? Maybe this is the reason you're all dead? Just thought I'd let you know that some of the artwork from the mission objective screens are directly taken from the comic. So disappointed in you, Idle FX, how dare you reuse assets from something no one else would read. Anyway, the 200 meter drop liquidizes Drake's body faster than a spicy burrito liquidizes my shits, and your spirit is transported to the spirit realm. The 4 spirit gods insult you, give you information that barely furthers your knowledge of what's meant to be done, and transports your soul into a new body. These are the only actions they do for the rest of the game. From now on, every time you die, you need to wait 10 seconds before respawning, all the while the spirit gods let loose with insults. This humiliation would be fine, but they feel more directed at the player than Drake, and most of my deaths were at the hands of poor controls and ineptitude with how information is given to you. While this is an annoyance on its own right, you don't get checkpoints during missions, and the final kick in the proverbials to further exacerbate your pain is that you have a 10-minute time limit to finish each mission. Though it's not so bad considering most missions are a few minutes long and you are granted time bonuses for progressing, some levels are excruciatingly long for the limitations placed on the gameplay. These levels have conflicting mechanics because you need to rush yourself through the level to finish it on time, but the lengthier levels are crawling with foes, so you are either gunned down moments before finishing the extensive level or risk running out of time. After being transported to a new body, you pursue the courier after the ghost assassin hands the soul artifact to him. While this may be confusing to some, the prequel comic explains that the ghost assassin can only stay out of the spirit realm for limited amounts at a time. The comic doesn't explain why Drake is mere inches away from the courier in the cutscene but transported a street away at the start of the gameplay portion. During the game you just randomly gain more abilities, and I'd like to think they're only gained because Drake just so happens to remember what powers he has, like at the start of the game. You recall that you have the capacity to draw souls towards you or detonate souls. The problem with either of those powers is that you need to awkwardly hold down the power's respective button while killing an enemy for it to work. I found that the ability was very inconsistent with working, as it never worked on any flying enemy, and instead of homing onto your location like advertised by the Undying Dragon power brochure, it would go to the location where you were when you drew in the soul. What this means is if you need to jump out of the way of gunfire, you'll see that precious soul fly straight past you. The soul detonation ability is essentially useless, as you need basically every precious health giving soul you can get your undead hands on. The explosion radius is so small, it does so little damage, and enemies are barely ever bunched up close enough together to even feel the singe of the explosive blast soul. Exceeding 99 health with the green souls allows you to unleash the power of the Undying Dragon, which is a supposedly powerful close range melee flowery attack. I say supposedly powerful because in the rare moments I got to use it, I barely was in range of enemies, and getting closer would risk me being gunned down. It's rare to use it because your health barely exceeds 99 due to enemy fire, and the fact that excessive health will decay faster than a coke addict's nose cavities. If you read the prequel comics, which I'm sure no one but I did, you find out the Undying Dragon is a sentient creature, and I'm glad the developers had the restraint to not have the dragon be a character that spouts shitty dialogue like his life depended on it. After being blown up in a fireworks factory, Drake catches up to the courier after he decides to gamble at a casino. Yeah, I'm sure someone this professional would just abandon their job after being shot at a couple of times and spend some downtime losing money. If that doesn't sound like a forced attempt to artificially lengthen the game, the courier then loses the soul artifact at the casino. Boss fights do try to mix it up with the unique stages and ways of defeating them, but like the normal enemies, there's no health bar or indication that they're being damaged. They just soak in bullets like my ego soaks in compliments from YouTube comments, and the fight just seems to randomly end, like the game just grew bored of watching you unload your 30th clip into the boss. I was stuck on this lightning boss for the longest of times before I buckled worse than a skinny guy holding up his fat girlfriend and looked up a walkthrough. The conductors that are tinier than the brain in Drake's skull are meant to be shot before killing the boss, and the occasional electrical spark made from them are the only indicator they power the shield around the boss. As per usual, Drake gets killed and the soul portal artifact is pried from his clammy hands to extend the game by a few more levels. Drake gets so many bodies throughout the story that, better not make a transgender joke. Well, he gets new bodies more frequently than the female in a gangbang. It looks like the developers thought beating a dead horse could be applied to every animal. Am I the only one that thinks this sounds like a slowed down version of the start of Gangsta's Paradise? While most of the soundtrack is fairly generic and forgettable, a few standout tracks makes me yearn for a better fleshed out musical score. You are revived so many times that it begins to drain the spirit statues. Hopefully they don't have the energy to keep chastising me, and they transport Drake's soul into his original body. This body has some gnarly bullet holes that Drake should renovate by putting in a speaker and fish tank in. I'd rather just take the stairs, thanks. Your master's body is placed into a cyborg and versus you in a boss battle, cause the Tang clan ain't nothing to fuck with. Mind you, cyborgs with bodies within them are meant to be inferior to the ones with souls, so I'm confused as to why we get a boss fight from a lesser model according to the logic presented in the comic. Oh, the comic doesn't matter, does it? In fact, you never know the master's name, he's only referred to as master like he forgot to tell Drake that bit of information. My strategy for this level was just to run circles around the master cyborg to avoid the missiles he frequently fired, and he was a pretty comical sight. After Tang opens the spirit portal, you crash the show and the ghost assassin takes the soul portal artifact, leaping through the portal with Drake in hot pursuit. And just like that, the game forgets about Tang. He doesn't so much as send a single cyborg through the portal to help. In these levels set in the spirit realm, the game finally feels empathy for you and grants you a respawn system, where you spawn close to where you died. I suppose you could argue away that this is implemented so late because you can't technically die in the spirit realm. You need to jump down, retrieve the soul artifact, equip it, and get the fuck off the platform in 2 seconds, because if you don't, these demons will bum rush you worse than an attractive man dropping the soap in a prison full of sex-deprived gays. You are required to collect the 5 parts of the Master Soul, and I'm surprised that so much soul could fit into a little body.
You dare to enter uninvited! Who are you?
I guess they didn't read the prequel comic. To defeat this boss, you need to shoot away the bones located on the wall, which indicates which of the heads is susceptible to damage. That's the end? Tang's still at large with an army of soul-charged cyborgs and...
So I guess this is the end?
Hardly. It has just begun.
Woo! We're getting a sequel! See you in the show, when I'll be richer than Tang! I'm gonna be filthy fucking rich! Unfortunately, Drake committed suicide after hearing the low sales this game made. If you're having game problems, I feel bad for you, Drake. You've got 99 glitches and a patch won't help. While I recognise that Drake of the 99 Dragons is more broken than Drake's body would have been after he launched himself out of a window, I still had a weirdly decent and, dare I say, fun time for most of the game. This was the game I saw the most potential with because although it wasn't the most original meshing of ideas, who wouldn't want to gun down baddies while running on a wall in a cool stylized world? The levels are varied in their meticulous designs, which are dotted with small details throughout to the objectives, although these are not the most creative, I will admit. While there is always a hindrance during gameplay, in the less broken sections you get a glimpse of how the game was meant to be, and I yearned for a game with its likeness to be made. If you hadn't guessed by now in the review, I'm playing the PC version, so that's why I'm not as harsh with this compared to if I had played the Xbox version. Although I can stomach most of the game, the more vague and unfair sections of the game push it to where it is in the list. If you are worried about the people working on this not redeeming themselves, don't worry, they've accomplished that with the Cooking Mama series. See you next time, although there might not be a return from me. My cool new dragon tattoo has been making me do stupider actions, like playing this in the first place. Okay, I lied, I can't afford a tattoo. Instead I'll be dragging myself over to my phone to DM Mia Khalifa.